I wish you bluebird in the spring to give your heart a song to sing, and then a kiss. But more than this, I wish you love.
It was a rainy and very wet spring day when David made his debut into society. In a farmhouse on Culp Lane, his expectant mother, grandmother, and father were anxiously waiting for the doctor to arrive. Meanwhile, about a mile down Culp Lane, the doctor's Model T was hopelessly stuck in the muddy road. A farmhand was sent to fetch him in a horse and buggy, but David just couldn't wait. So, although the doctor wasn't in time for the birth, he was there to cut the umbilical cord. The proud 21-year-old papa couldn't believe he helped deliver his own son, all 9 3/4 pounds of him.
Just Molly and me, and baby makes 3. We're happy in my blue heaven.
David did not feel deprived during the Depression years because his mother managed the Lewis family's meager finances very well. His experiences growing up during the Depression made him understand the value of a dollar, and that frugality stayed with him throughout his life. With his weekly allowance of 25 cents, he managed to spend a dime on the movies, a nickel on peanuts and jelly beans, a nickel for his church offering, and even put aside a nickel for his savings account. Money was scarce, and the Lewises didn't buy anything they couldn't afford to pay for in cash. One exception, a set of the Book of Knowledge, which his mother bought on an installment plan in 1933. When only 6 years old, David would shake the ashes and add a couple of coal chunks to the stove, grab a quilt, and start reading the Book of Knowledge. He read each volume cover to cover for many years. David excelled in school and graduated valedictorian of Cesar High's class of 1945. He was well liked enough to be voted class president and captain of the football team. He was editor of the school newspaper and a strong track athlete, specializing in the high hurdle. He once told his daughter Sumi, after they had seen the movie The Way We Were, that Robert Redford's character reminded him of how he was in high school. Smart, good-looking, athletic, a talented writer, and very humble. David joined the Navy on May 8, 1945. A month before graduating from high school, his mother fondly remembered David chugging a quart of milk out of the bottle right before leaving home to serve his country. He was sent to Florida for basic training, where he became severely ill with rheumatic fever. By the time he recovered, World War II had ended. After leaving the Navy, David attended Shurtleff College in Alton, Illinois from March 1946 to June 1947. He went on to the University of Illinois and received a B.S. degree in journalism in June 1948. His GI Bill benefits only paid for 2 years of tuition, so he took as many courses as he was allowed in order to complete his degree in just 2 years. In addition to the overload of courses, he waited on tables 30 hours a week. Whew! David's first job was sports editor and reporter for the Edwardsville Intelligencer in 1948. Then in 1949, he served as state editor of the Alton Telegraph. Not long after, he went on to work in the St. Louis Lincoln Mercury Plant Publications Office. David enjoyed life as a young bachelor, knowing that the best was yet to come.
Here I go again. I hear those trumpets blow again. All aglow again, taking a chance on love. Here I slide again, about to take that ride again.
Yuri wrote, David and I first became aware of each other because we would sometimes pass by each other on the Boston University campus. I noticed him because he was so cute. He noticed me because I was Asian. Fast forward to a blistering hot day in New York City, where we bumped into each other on 47th Street and 5th Avenue, the left corner of St. Patrick's Cathedral. We were both so happy to see a familiar face that although I never spoke to him before, I greeted him as though I'd known him forever. He invited me to join him in a nearby coffee shop for iced coffee, which I accepted. David swept me off my feet, and the rest is history. Not long after we met, David accepted a job offer from Ford in Michigan, while I was still working in a Manhattan radio station. He proposed a couple of months later by saying, "If you don't marry me, you're crazy." I didn't want to be considered crazy, so I married him. David arranged everything for our wedding at the Martha Mary Chapel in Greenfield Village on his 26th birthday, April 5th, 1953. This was the first and last time he fed me, and the first and last time he carried me. David's first job after getting his master's in public relations from Boston University was at Borden's in New York City. After working a short time at Borden's, he was offered a job at Ford for a salary he couldn't refuse. It was while working on Ford's 50th anniversary that David became interested in Ford history. He later worked at General Motors as a PR executive for many years. But David would be the first to admit that he was not a company man. He has never regretted leaving the high-paying jobs in the automobile industry. After resigning from Ford to work full-time on his doctoral dissertation, David received word that he had been chosen to receive a Fulbright scholarship to the London School of Economics. So off we went to England, putting the unfinished dissertation on hold. We took the train to New York, boarded the QE2, and sailed to England. Baby Kim had to sleep in a drawer in the small cabin we shared on the ship. Our Fulbright stay in England was a blast. During school holidays, we would travel to different countries in Europe. Our landlady in England thought we were crazy to travel with Kim. She advised us to get a nanny and keep Kim in England. We thought she was crazy for even suggesting it. Our year abroad was a great experience and left us with many happy memories. One night, we decided to go out to dinner at a little Chinese restaurant on the left bank near the Sorbonne in Paris. A Chinese woman in a floor-length mink coat and an older bearded gentleman were seated next to us. I whispered to David, "Is that John Steinbeck?" David replied, "No, it's Hemingway." David went back to work on his dissertation upon our return from England, and finally, at age 33, he received his doctorate. David's parents and I were proud spectators at the commencement held at the Michigan Stadium. David became the proud father of 3 daughters and a son. Kim was born in 1956, Lonnie in 1958, and Sumi and Lance on the same day in 1960 and 1961. Yuri wrote, "One of my favorite memories was seeing David drive off with our 4 children all standing up in the back seat in the days before seatbelts and car seats for a fun outing with their dad." David gave me a break on Saturdays. Directly after breakfast, he'd be in complete charge of the kids until 6 p.m., when they'd all come home to dinner. One of the kids' favorite outings was to get on their bikes and ride down to Bluefront for comic books and candy. Whatever the kids did, David did too. His children thought of David as the coolest, handsomest, and smartest dad ever. While trick-or-treating one year, David was asked by someone noting his children's Asian heritage, "Are they all adopted?" The answer, "Hell no, they're all mine." David's 15 years in newspaper work and public relations with Ford and GM helped in approaching his writing as a reporter-scholar. 19 years of research, reflection, and writing originating with his dissertation culminated in David's magnum opus, The Public Image of Henry Ford. The Public Image of Henry Ford would compete with the likes of John Toland for the Pulitzer Prize in 1976. The Detroit Free Press said, Both Ford's genius and his shadowy side are presented here in fascinating detail, a large contribution to the historical record. When the media wanted to know something about Henry Ford, they called David, who was a font of Ford information.
The Model T, the universal car, the car that would get you there and get you back, was available to everyone. Some 15 million of them were sold thanks to Henry Ford and the moving assembly line which he pioneered. And we do owe much of our life of abundance to this man and what he brought about.
Over the years, David has written hundreds of articles about Henry Ford, his family, and his company. He also has appeared on television history programs as an expert on Ford and the automotive industry.
Professor David Lewis has studied the influence of farm life on Henry Ford's development.
Henry Ford was a farm boy, and he was always interested in mechanics and steam engines in his youth. He also hated the drudgery of farm life. And so initially he hoped to develop some sort of conveyance which would relieve the burden and get away from horses on the farm. He was a simple man. He remained all of his life at heart a mechanic and perhaps a farmer as well. And that was one of the foundation stones of his great appeal to the masses, to the common people. Because in many instances, they could say, well, Henry Ford is very much as I am, except he's got $1 billion.
David's column, Ford Country, in Cars and Parts magazine, was a true labor of love. David led many historical Ford and automotive organizations. One of David's passion projects was the creation of the Ford Piquette Avenue Plant Museum in Detroit. David's commitment and leadership were instrumental in seeing Ford's first factory saved and restored to become a national historic landmark of our automotive heritage for future generations. Ready for a career change, David applied for a job in academia and was pleased to start his teaching career as an associate professor of business history in 1965. He was a full professor within 2 years. It normally takes many years to earn this distinction. After many years of working in the business world, academia suited him to a T. He always said that being a professor was the best job in the world. A student wrote, "I liked Professor Lewis a lot and found his personal opinions on life, love, and business very helpful and endearing. He made the class fun. He stands out as one of the most interesting professors I've ever had here at Michigan." In most ways, David is very much his father's son. His scholarly side came from his dad, especially his interest in history. David got his drive and determination from his mother. Edith was raised on a farm in southern Illinois with little formal education, but she was hardworking and had a can-do attitude about life. David's mother thought her son could excel in everything he did. She had complete faith in him, even when he flew from New York to Illinois to tell his parents he was getting married to a Hawaiian-born Japanese girl. She admitted to me that the announcement floored her at first. Then she thought that in all the years that he had dated, he was very picky. So, I must be extra special, or David wouldn't be marrying me. From that moment on, as far as she was concerned, I was her second daughter. David had one sister and one brother-in-law, Sharon and Marvin Horton. They had 3 children and 6 grandchildren. Sharon was David's last immediate family member, and even though they lived far apart, they kept in touch regularly. David enjoyed his 4 grandchildren and was always there to lend a hand to a child learning to walk or to give support and encouragement by attending school events, celebrations, and family get-togethers. David knew how to have fun with his grandchildren because he never forgot how it felt to be a kid. David took great pleasure in driving Black Beauty, his beautifully restored 1921 Model T touring car. Purchased in 1973, he sold it to fellow Fordophile Mike Skinner in 2006. When not participating in car meets and parades, Black Beauty now resides in the Ford Paquette Avenue Plant Museum in Detroit. In February 2007, David decided that it was time for him to retire from teaching. He enjoyed being a professor of American business history and the global automotive industry for almost 40 years. At age 81, David was the oldest professor in the history of Ross Business School at the time of his retirement. David wanted to spend this last phase of his life writing. He spent countless hours collaborating with his friend and protege, Mike Skinner, on Ford-related projects and his memoir. In his last years, Mike visited David every week to work on their various projects. For decades, on his last day of class, Professor Lewis acquainted his students with some of his favorite things. Life's simple pleasures, as opposed to money, position, and power. Most of his favorite things were free or inexpensive, and were most enjoyed with someone special. He believed that there are 3 basic ingredients for lifelong happiness: good health, a job that you like and that likes you, and to love and be loved. If one has these 3 things, one has 97% or more of that which makes for happiness. One's favorite things simply make a pleasant life the more pleasant. Dawn of a new day. Lingering sunsets. Nights when even the tiniest stars are allowed out. Every season and month of the year. A walk in a forest. For me, the equivalent of standing on a high, windy hill. Blue skies with popcorn clouds. Autumn's soft sunlight. A stroll on the University of Michigan campus, especially on a quiet summer's evening. Calling my parents on my birthday, thanking them for bringing me into this world, and hearing my father say, "My boy, may I assure you, it was a pleasure." Discovering ways to be a boy again, and I've found hundreds. My students and others on the threshold of life, for whom the time of day is only 9:30 a.m. and the dew is still on the grass. Daydreams of people and places and the warm memories they evoke. Couples with the love light in their eyes. enthusiasm, imaginativeness, and youngness at heart. Whistling a happy tune anywhere, and especially in a closed stairwell, which improves the sound. Canoeing on Ann Arbor's Huron River. The Henry Ford Museum in Greenfield Village. The bookish smell of my study and library. Grist mills with water pouring over turning wheels. The sight, sound, and smell of a Model T Ford. Films or musicals that have happy endings. The book, Goodbye, Mr. Chips, in which I saw more of myself with each passing year. Tap dancing, particularly that of Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers. Among the love songs I like best is I Wish You Love, which surely has one of the most delightful lines of any song. I wish you bluebirds in the spring. What more could one wish for another? Being adventurous, having the best job in the whole wide world. The pleasant feeling that I'll be lucky enough to fiddle and dance for as long as the music of life plays. For all the music of life seems to be like a bell that is ringing for me.
Fairy tales can come true. It can happen to you if you're young at heart. For it's hard, you will find, to be narrow of mind if you're young at heart. You can go to extremes with impossible schemes. You can laugh when your dreams fall apart at the seams. And life gets more exciting with each passing day. And love is either in your heart or on its way. Don't you know that it's worth every treasure on earth to be young at heart? For as rich as you are, it's much better by far to be young at heart. And if you should survive to 105, look at all you'll derive out of being alive. And here is the best part, you have a head start if you are among the very young